A man was thrown out of a store just because of the color of his skin. What happened next, no one saw coming. The story begins on any given day in a small grocery store, with its routine atmosphere and a dense air of indifference. The store was full, as usual, of customers coming to buy what they needed for their daily lives. Among them was a dark-skinned man named Samuel, who entered with a serene yet determined attitude. It wasn't the first time he had shopped there, although sometimes he felt the subtle discomfort of certain employees' glances. This time, however, everything changed. The employee, a man in his 40s named Joaquin, was behind the counter watching Samuel since he walked in the door. Joaquin had always been known for his rough attitude and lack of friendliness. But that day, there seemed to be something more. When Samuel approached the register, Joaquin looked up and stared at him in a dismissive manner, as if his presence deeply bothered him. "What do you want?" Joaquin asked with no greeting, almost with disdain in his voice. Samuel, accustomed to prejudice, tried to ignore him. He grabbed his items and walked toward the counter, but he didn't expect what happened next. "You can't be here," Joaquin said in a firm and abrupt tone. The words hit Samuel like a blow, and he looked up in surprise. The other customers in the store started murmuring. Some turned to watch the scene, while others continued with their shopping, but all were listening. "What?" Samuel responded, trying to understand what he had just heard. "You can't be here. Do you know what I'm saying? This isn't your place. Get out before I call security." Joaquin's voice rose slightly, now filled with hostility, and the murmurs among the other customers began to intensify. In that instant, Samuel felt a contained fury growing in his chest. It wasn't the first time he had faced such hatred and racism, but it had never been so blatant, so obvious. A trace of anger showed on his face, but at the same time, a deep sadness for having to live through this scene once again. However, something inside him wouldn't allow him to stand by and do nothing. "I'm not leaving," Samuel responded with tense calm, looking Joaquin directly in the eye. Joaquin didn't expect resistance, and his eyes widened for a second, as if he thought Samuel would give in to the pressure. But Samuel didn't back down. With one last look full of determination, he began walking toward the exit. That's when a murmur began to spread rapidly among the customers, and someone whispered, "Racism," clearly. Samuel didn't know what was about to happen, but something inside him pushed him to not let it pass. Days went by, and Samuel, still with the indignation from that humiliation, began to plan. He decided that he wouldn't let Joaquin, nor the system supporting him, go unpunished. It wasn't something he did out of simple vengeance, but because he felt the world wouldn't change if people like him didn't rise up and take action. Samuel had worked in technology and had learned about social media and how to use it. He decided to create a video, not to attack, but to show the world what had happened. In that video, he calmly recounted what he had experienced, how Joaquin had kicked him out just because of the color of his skin, and how the store, upon learning of the incident, had decided to support the racist employee, even offering him public apologies, but not Samuel. Soon after, the video went viral. Supportive comments for Samuel began to flood in, and people's indignation was palpable. The store, in its attempt to stick to its silent strategy, didn't anticipate the wave of protests that came from all corners of the country. Social media exploded, but what no one expected was Samuel's reaction. With the support of hundreds of thousands of people who joined his cause, Samuel started receiving job offers from companies that valued inclusion and diversity, as well as support for various organizations fighting against racism. However, his revenge wasn't just about gaining support. His revenge was subtler, deeper. He used his viral moment to create a campaign that promoted equality in the treatment of all individuals, regardless of their race. Joaquin, for his part, not only lost his job, but was also forced to face the legal consequences of his actions. What started as a small, intimidating act turned into a public lesson that many didn't expect. Samuel's video quickly became a viral phenomenon. The outrage was massive. The hashtag Justice for Samuel began to fill social media, and thousands of people shared his story. The pressure on the store grew exponentially, but what happened next wasn't what Samuel expected. The store, in an attempt to minimize the damage, organized a press conference in which, of course, Joaquin was present. It was a tense scene. Journalists relentlessly asked direct questions, and the store's representatives gave evasive answers, trying to steer the attention toward anything else. Joaquin's silence was unbearable. Samuel watched the video from his home, knowing that every word, every gesture was an opportunity for the store to retract, to offer a genuine apology. But that never happened. The truth was that institutional racism ran so deep within the store that it wasn't just reflected in Joaquin, but also in the way the company's executives handled the situation. After that press conference, Joaquin continued working at the store. The company simply chose to act as if nothing had happened, making the public believe that the incident had been a misunderstanding. But Samuel didn't stop there. He knew there was something bigger at play. He didn't want to just see Joaquin lose his job. He wanted racism to be confronted in a tangible way, to have a real impact. That's why he decided to go further. A couple of weeks later, he organized a protest outside the store, accompanied by several activists and supporters. The place was filled with signs, banners, and slogans like, "No to racism anywhere," and "Color doesn't determine a person's worth." As Samuel prepared to speak publicly, Joaquin appeared in the store, escorted by a couple of employees who kept a close eye on him. The tension in the air was palpable. "What are you doing here, Samuel?" Joaquin asked in a challenging tone, as if he didn't understand what was at stake. Samuel stared at him, and for a moment, the silence was absolute. The crowd held their breath, waiting for a response. "I'm here to make sure that what you made me feel that day never happens to anyone else." Samuel's voice rang out strong and clear. With each word, the pressure mounted as if the whole city were watching. The murmurs of the crowd intensified, and the journalists' cameras pointed at both of them. But what followed was even more shocking. Joaquin, losing his composure, approached Samuel and with a look of contained rage, said, "This isn't going to end well for you. People like you always think you have the right to do whatever you want, to expose everything, to make a fuss over anything." His voice was harsh, and you could feel the disdain in every word that came out of his mouth. The confrontation didn't end there. As Samuel and Joaquin argued, the crowd began to shout, and the police were called to calm things down. However, all this only served to fuel the anger of the people who, in the end, could no longer stay silent. The tension was palpable, and more people joined the protest. But the most unexpected thing happened when Joaquin's boss, the store manager, showed up. Instead of offering a public apology, as everyone expected, what he said was even more heartbreaking. "Samuel, your attitude is only causing more problems. This kind of action doesn't solve anything, and your insistence is damaging the reputation of our store. You need to learn to be more understanding." The manager's words hit deep. It was as if the full weight of institutional racism fell on Samuel's shoulders. But he didn't let himself be intimidated. With a microphone in hand, he looked at the camera and the crowd with fierce determination. "I'm not here to ask for forgiveness, because I haven't done anything wrong. I'm here to demand that racism stop, to demand that people like you take responsibility for your actions. And I won't rest until everyone sees the truth." At that precise moment, something changed. Many people's eyes were opened, and although the store tried to move on, the public pressure increased so much that, finally, a month later, the store was forced to temporarily close its doors for restructuring. Joaquin was fired and faced charges of racial discrimination. But beyond individual justice, what Samuel had truly achieved was something deeper. He brought visibility to a problem that many preferred to ignore and, in some way, made people start questioning their own prejudices. Samuel's fight didn't end with the protest. It ended in a shift in mentality, in a community that stopped being complacent with racism. Samuel not only achieved a personal victory, but a collective one.